Shirley Jones was known for decades as one of the most gentle and comforting faces in American entertainment. To audiences around the world, she represented warmth, innocence, and family values. Whether singing in classic movie musicals or playing a loving mother on television, she carried an image that felt safe and familiar. Yet behind that peaceful public image was a personal life filled with emotional struggle, silence, and sacrifice. Shirley Jones was born in 1934 in a small town in Pennsylvania, far away from Hollywood glamour. Her childhood was simple and quiet, shaped by ordinary routines and strong family values. As a young girl, Shirley found joy in music. She loved to sing, and very early on, people around her noticed that her voice was special. By the time she was 12 years old, her teachers believed she needed professional training. This belief led her to study at the Pittsburgh Playhouse, where she learned singing, acting, and dance. At the time, Shirley did not fully realize how important those years would become, but they quietly prepared her for a future she never imagined. Everything changed in 1955 when she was cast as Lori in the movie version of the musical Oklahoma. The film was a huge success, and Shirley's performance immediately made her a star. She was young, talented, and full of promise. Her voice, beauty, and gentle presence made her stand out in a crowded industry. At only 21 years old, Shirley achieved something no other performer had ever done before. She received a personal contract from Rodgers and Hammerstein, two of the most powerful names in musical theater. This honor placed her at the very top of Hollywood success. Fame came quickly, and with it came new opportunities, new pressures, and new people entering her life. It was during this exciting and confusing period that Shirley met Jack Cassidy. Jack was 10 years older than her, and already well known on Broadway. He was charming, confident, and full of energy. When Jack entered a room, people noticed him immediately. He had a strong presence and a way of making others feel drawn to him. The two met while working on the European tour of Oklahoma. Although Jack was already married at the time, he approached Shirley with confidence and ease. He introduced himself warmly and spoke as though they were already close. Shirley later said that she was not easily impressed by looks alone, but Jack had something more. He had humor, confidence, and a theatrical charm that made him exciting. When the tour reached Paris, Jack invited Shirley out to dinner. He introduced her to new experiences, like champagne and foods she had never tried before. Shirley knew she should refuse, but she agreed. That night, they talked for hours, laughing and sharing stories. When Jack walked her back to her hotel, he kissed her gently and told her he would marry her one day. Shirley reminded him that he already had a wife, but Jack only smiled, as if the future he imagined was already certain. That moment marked the beginning of a relationship that would shape the rest of Shirley's life. It felt magical at first, filled with excitement and passion. But even then, beneath the romance, there were signs that this love would come at a heavy cost. In 1956, Jack Cassidy followed through on his promise. He divorced his first wife and married Shirley Jones, who was only 22 years old. Suddenly, Shirley found herself not only a wife, but also a stepmother to Jack's young son, David Cassidy. To the public, the marriage looked perfect. A beautiful Hollywood actress and a successful Broadway star appeared to have everything. They attended events together, smiled for cameras, and built an image of success and happiness. But behind closed doors, the reality was very different. As Shirley's career continued to grow, Jack struggled with his own insecurities. Shirley's success in Hollywood films brought her national fame, while Jack remained more connected to the stage. Although he was talented and respected, he began to feel overshadowed by his wife's growing popularity. This imbalance slowly affected their relationship. Jack needed constant attention and admiration, not just from Shirley, but from everyone around him. Over time, this need became destructive. What began as harmless flirting turned into repeated affairs. At first, Shirley tried to ignore the rumors. She told herself that this behavior was common in the entertainment world, and that love required forgiveness. She loved Jack deeply and believed that standing by him was part of being a good wife. But the betrayals continued. Eventually, Shirley learned a truth that changed everything. Jack admitted to her that he was unfaithful not only with women, but also with men. At that time, such information could destroy a career overnight. Jack explained that he wanted to experience everything life had to offer, and that faithfulness was not part of his nature. For Shirley, this confession was deeply painful. She had grown up believing in loyalty, commitment, and marriage as something sacred. Now she faced the reality that the man she loved could never be fully devoted to her. Despite the pain, Shirley stayed. She stayed for her children and for the family she hoped to protect. She gave birth to 3 sons and worked tirelessly to give them stability, often carrying the emotional weight alone. In public, Shirley continued to smile. She played loving mothers on screen while quietly struggling in her real life. Jack's behavior became more open over time. He no longer tried to hide his affairs, and sometimes even spoke about them in front of others. Friends later recalled how Shirley rarely reacted, choosing silence instead. She believed that leaving Jack would break the family apart and harm her children. As years passed, the emotional burden grew heavier. Shirley felt isolated, humiliated, and exhausted. Yet she remained, believing that love meant endurance. In the 1970s, Shirley reached another peak of fame when she starred in The Partridge Family. On television, she represented the perfect mother, leading a happy family band. In reality, her own family life was filled with tension and pain. Jack became increasingly resentful of her success and continued his reckless lifestyle. Their marriage, once full of passion, was now filled with silence and hurt. Shirley later admitted that she felt herself slowly losing her sense of self. She was admired by millions, yet deeply lonely. Eventually, the weight became too much to carry. After nearly 20 years of marriage, Shirley filed for divorce in 1974. It was a decision made with exhaustion rather than anger. She hoped it would bring peace, but instead, it opened the door to a new kind of pain she was not prepared for. After the divorce, Shirley believed the most painful chapter of her life was finally over. She focused on her children and her career, hoping to heal from years of emotional strain. However, Jack Cassidy remained a presence in her life. He continued to call her, sometimes asking for reconciliation, sometimes seeking comfort. Shirley resisted returning to the relationship she had worked so hard to escape. In December 1976, Jack invited her to visit him for a drink. Shirley declined, choosing distance for her own well-being. Only hours later, Jack's life came to a sudden and tragic end due to an accident in his apartment. He was only 49 years old. The news shocked Shirley deeply. Despite everything, she still loved him. His death filled her with grief, guilt, and unanswered questions. She later admitted that if Jack had lived, she was not sure she could ever have fully moved on. His passing also deeply affected their children, who were still very young. Shirley once again appeared strong in public, but privately she carried a heavy sorrow. In the years that followed, Shirley married comedian Marty Ingalls. Their relationship was very different from her first marriage. Marty was devoted and stable, even though their personalities often clashed. Shirley later said that while the relationship was not always easy, it gave her something Jack never could: consistency and safety. They remained together for nearly 40 years until Marty's death in 2015. Yet even with a new marriage, Jack Cassidy remained a powerful memory in Shirley's life. For decades, she chose not to speak openly about the truth of her first marriage. She wanted to protect her children and avoid public scandal. Only later in life did she decide that silence no longer served her. In her memoir and later interviews, Shirley finally spoke honestly. She revealed that Jack had never been faithful, and that she had endured years of emotional pain in silence. She explained that speaking out was not about anger or revenge, but about freeing herself from secrets she had carried for too long. As she reached her 90s, Shirley felt there was nothing left to hide. Time had given her clarity. She acknowledged that Jack was the great love of her life. Even though that love came with deep wounds, her honesty changed how people viewed Jack Cassidy, no longer just as a charming star who died young, but as a complex man whose choices affected everyone around him. Shirley's story became one of strength, endurance, and truth. She showed that loving someone deeply does not mean ignoring pain forever. By finally sharing her experience, Shirley reclaimed her voice. Her story reminds us that behind every perfect image, there can be unseen struggles, and that sometimes telling the truth later in life is an act of courage, not weakness. Shirley Jones waited until she was ready, and when she spoke not to hurt, but to heal.